segment, we will focus on not only the economy, but our major sectors, industries, firms, and leaders that impact our wallets and economic opportunities. Today, we are pleased to speak with Mr. Ervin M. Perez, the Managing Director of Legacy Fund Limited and the Managing Partner of Alpha Capital, LLP. Welcome, Mr. Perez.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure to be on the Legacy Market Show.
Well, before we get into our topic of discussion, can you tell us more about Legacy Markets as well as Alpha Capital, LLP?
Oh, thanks. So, some time ago, probably 2011, when I had just returned from studying, I was on a committee, a policy economic committee, looking at the debt super bond overhang and all of that stuff. And, we were thinking, how do we, manage this super bond while the government is constrained? And one thing was markets, using capital markets or using the markets where you issue long-term financial assets, stocks and bonds. And nobody was doing that. And, we also had a lot of the same kind of little bit of violence in the street. And my friend and myself were talking about what legacy do we have to give to the next generation. And we said, well, let's use our minds. Let's do something. And our goal was to try to find a way of raising capital in the market. And Alpha does quite similar, which is to use long-term savings from institutional investors, etc., to fund what we consider to be productive, transformative projects, public and private. In short, that's the job. And now we have a regulated space, meaning you have like a securities laws that we didn't have in 2011, 2012, and that should help our markets.
So ultimately, both of the organizations are continuing to expand throughout Belize.
Very true, very true. So initially, we started working with municipalities, primarily local governments, to finance public asset projects. But now with regulation, you want to have the private sector, like in some of those areas like agriculture, tourism, where, more private sector, more volatile, more risk, to be able to finance long term. And that would be, how the expansion should take place, moving just from the local governments into all the spaces that private sector occupies.
So both of these organizations work heavily within the finance industry in Belize. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So traditionally, as how business is done in Belize, you have a small business or you have a family shop and you want to expand, you would normally go to the credit union if you're a credit union member, or to a commercial bank for borrowing purposes. And while that is good, that has its own limitations. Financing, especially small companies or growing companies with debt, is always challenging, especially with debt from the bank. There is a monthly required payment, which if you miss, you are now in default. And as we know with small businesses, the revenues are up and down. They're very volatile, especially in new areas. That's where capital markets come in. You can have more permanent patient capital, as the word is used, when you have equity investors, so people investing in your business as owners, and are willing to wait until you can transform that business and make it profitable, and then you share in that profit with them through dividends. And then when it goes to even the traditional debt financing, instead of having these regular monthly payments like a loan from a commercial bank, you would have more, bullet payments, 5 years or 10 years, when your project or whatever you're investing has turned the corner and generates the cash flow. So that is how it's tied. But commercial banks and credit unions, they perform a very vital role. They act as our payment platform. And so a market like a securities market kind of sits on the commercial bank and uses the commercial bank for transactions, for settlements and that sort. And that's how, with this market that would be growing, the commercial bank's activities would also grow.
Okay, thank you for your expertise. So viewers, as you can see, Mr. Perez is very educated when it comes to finance in Belize. So let's go into a bit more depth about our show. From my understanding, this is a spin-off show of something that you started a few years ago. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, Mose from the Zinc Fence or the Cren Group, we had a great relationship through some business activities that they used to do, and we start talking about financial literacy. Like, it would be great if more Belizeans would have a lot more knowledge of the financial system, savings, investment, retirement, pension. And initially we had tried to approach other more stable institutions to participate, like provide some kind of financial literacy program. And we couldn't get anybody involved. And Mose has this morning show, and he said, well, why don't I give you some time, and then we can have this conversation. And I said, sure. And that's how we started, and we had this show called Money Monday. So every Monday we would talk a little bit about finance and savings and that sort of stuff. And that's where it started. We wanted to develop that show. As you know, in Belize, usually over the weekend there is a slew of killings and murders, and so it used to always happen that we're having our Monday Monday show to talk about business, and then we kind of end up having to discuss the socioeconomic problems, and so we transform it to Tuesday. But a wonderful Belizean out of Jamaica, Kalila Reynolds, I saw she went out and she created a local version in Jamaica of Money Monday, and then now it's I cannot recall the name, but it's a hugely followed show within the Caribbean where she talks about the business in Jamaica primarily, but she also is bringing in the Caribbean. And it came back to us that, hey, we in Belize need to get our stories going too. We need to start like what you guys are doing, talk to the entrepreneurs and the business people from all angles, from tech to sports to entertainment. And if we can get that conversation going and get the average Belizean who might speak Bolido, right, we'll play our Bolido to start actually playing in trying to own a piece of the jewel through the different companies, that would be a good transformation. So legacy markets is kind of like our spear to try to elevate the conversation regarding business.
Yeah, definitely. Ultimately, it serves as a platform to educate others on financial literacy. And that's amazing. You mentioned that we interview entrepreneurs, which is one of my favorite parts on this show. But do you feel like there's any industries that we're not included, or any industries or economies that aren't getting as much publicity compared to others? Well,
the agro sector is huge. I think that has not really been featured, and for various reasons. We did, as I saw the show, did a piece on the sugar industry, but there's a lot of other areas in agro sector, from honey production to corn to the beans, the grains, cattle, and that's a huge area that you'd want to have an opportunity for other Belizeans to be able to understand and invest. But some of that is also the lack of information in that space. Tech, we could do more featuring on tech. I know we're moving towards that. There's a lot of tech entrepreneurs doing a lot of different things to bring the power of tech to even to our small economy, and that's a useful thing. I know there's a great feature on art, that orange culture, and we continue to do that. So these are areas that are new, and that requires some attention. There's a lot of attention on tourism, because that's like the huge driver in the economy. And we also have to bring that still across on legacy markets. But I think you guys are doing a fantastic job in terms of covering most of the bases.
Thank you. And speaking of covering bases, we want to talk now about capital markets in the Caribbean region. So can you kindly tell our viewers what exactly a capital market is?
Yeah, so, like if you're looking to buy vegetables or fruits, you go to a farmer's market, right? Where you can buy, and it's full up with a lot of different farmers or stakeholders trading their produce for money. A capital market is one in which the owners of companies primarily trade or sell a small piece of their company to individuals who might be interested in taking a little bit of ownership, which would be stocks or equity, or providing some financing through a credit like a bond. But these tend to be much longer term assets like equity. which is then traded in a capital market, could be permanent. And the only way as a owner of an equity investment to get out of it is to sell it to somebody else. And that's what the market does allow you to trade that financial asset. And it's also done with long-term debt. A bond might be 20 years, which is a kind of like an IOU. You've lent a company like BL, so BL has debentures, you've lent BL a little bit of money, and that money, they won't pay you back that until 20 years down the road. And you might say, well, I'm going to get married, I want to buy a home, I need to sell that investment. And the capital market should allow that to take place. And that's what we're trying to really develop here. As with your business headlines, I note you guys speak about the Jamaica Stock Exchange.
Right.
So Jamaica is way ahead, Trinidadian as well, and the Bayesian. And that's part of the capital market.
So what are the main reasons that we should be advocating for a capital market here in Belize?
Well, where the greatest value in terms of economic growth happens, it tends to be in the space of new industries, right? And that's where the greatest risks are, because in new industries, there is not a developed market. The market is growing. So one of the greatest challenges in new markets is revenue stability, right? Ebb and flow, there's sharp volatility. What does that do if you're an entrepreneur or a business person? It makes managing your operations very difficult because your cash flow is very uncertain. How capital market will help all of us in Belize is in that space where you have volatility, you can then sell the future, like way down in the road, when this business has turned the corner, those profits and through equity, through somebody saying, I'm going to take a stake in your business, Destiny. I'm going to hold that for 10 years. But with the market, it can be, I can come out of that position or I can come into that position. So the ability to help support our entrepreneurs, our growth business, to allow them to survive that volatility is why a capital or securities market would really help. So, and the growth areas would be where most wealth could be created. And one of the challenges, I was just talking to a business friend of mine, and we were talking about sports, and he was saying, well, why he thinks it's such a challenge in Belize is that we just don't have enough disposable income. Like everybody's just getting by. Mm-hmm. And you're just getting by, it means no wealth is being created, right? So by being able to create a lot more wealth, not only will we have funds to get by, but we have to enjoy, to go out and so forth, and those other industries can develop. So the great hope is that this market will be able to push those things.
Definitely. Lastly, can you tell us about the Municipal Securities Act?
So I mentioned very early on, 2012, when we started this business, we were trying to find a way of helping most Belizeans, or about over 50%, live in urban centers. And the quality of their lives is really dictated by the quality of experience in these urban centers: Belize City, Cayo, San Ignacio, Orange Walk, San Pedro. And the infrastructure around you helps, right? I have a colleague of mine who is saying that her car is always dusty because the road is not paved. So, that's just a quality of life experience. And so, one of the things we wanted to do was to work with municipalities. A lot of municipalities have local revenues that they collect, like property taxes, that they can use to spend on infrastructure. And what is the typical situation is you have a road infrastructure, drainage, or you want to build a little park, you need to spend the money now, and it will take some time to get it back if you're a municipality. And so municipal securities is the kind of financial asset that municipalities can issue into a market to institutional investors and retail to invest in a municipality, right? I'm going to build so much streets or so much drains. I have to build a park. I want to build a welcome center for my municipality. Now, recently, last year, in 2023, the government finally passed legislation, laws for that. So before, when we used to do it in 2012 and afterwards, it was in an unregulated space, right? With the Municipal Securities Act, you now have rules of the game that says this is what the municipalities have to disclose to investors. This is what they have to put together. And so we think it's going to provide a great fillip for municipal development.
Well, Mr. Perez, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your expertise and your insights. But most importantly, thank you for following your dream and continuing the legacy and having us on Legacy Markets
Thank you
TV.
for having me.
When we come back, the sensational DJ and entertainer Linda Belize will join us, so don't go away.